For many, Elon Musk is the real-life Tony Stark. He started by creating a simple app and ended up becoming one of the richest men on the planet. But with great power also comes great responsibility. And that's where the biggest criticism some people have of him arises. Musk has revolutionized the world with his inventions, many of which have been funded by the US government itself. And it's precisely this that sparks debate. Is all that money really being allocated to the best option? Or will it end up benefiting only a few? While those resources could have been used instead of trying to escape Earth to save it. To truly understand this debate, it's important to know the story from the beginning. So here's the context. Elon Reeve Musk was born on June 28, 1971 in Pretoria, South Africa. His parents are May Haldeman, a Canadian model and nutritionist, and Errol Musk, a brilliant electrical and mechanical engineer. The work of both makes their family very well off, giving Elon and his siblings everything anyone could ask for. But despite this, his life is far from perfect. From a very young age, he became a compulsive reader who managed to memorize absolutely everything he read and began to show intelligence slightly above the rest. But this made him the target of ridicule at school for being seen as a nerd. He was also shy and had very few social skills. Things weren't very good at home either. Errol, his father, raised Elon in a strict and sometimes violent manner, a treatment he gave to the whole family. The constant physical violence towards May, his wife, ended up dissolving the marriage when Elon was only 8 years old. As a result, May and the children moved out to start a new life away from Errol. The problem is that a couple of years later, Elon was overcome with guilt and decided to move back in with his father so he wouldn't feel alone, which over time ended up being one of the worst decisions he could have made. Because life with his father became a huge challenge. It turned into a living hell. At times, Errol is kind, but most of the time he changes and spends hours yelling at his son, telling him he's worthless, completely destroying his self-esteem. During this same period, his father sends him to a hostile survival camp where the children's physical and emotional limits are tested. There, they are given little food and water a day and are encouraged to fight among themselves to take the resources of others under the idea of turning them back. Men. To this day, Musk often recalls these moments with his father and other children with a fake smile that hides his discomfort. In his own words, Errol is the most despicable and evil man he has ever known. Fighting and showing strength never interested Musk. What really captivated him were books, video games, science fiction, computers, and technology. In his free time, he learned to program, which eventually became his favorite hobby. Eager to learn more, he took some programming classes and then continued on his own. The result of hours of practice was the creation of his first video game, which he named Blastar, a space shooter game. It was simple but entertaining, which led him to sell it for $500. He sold it to the magazine PC and Office Technology. All of this at just 12 years old. As time went by, now a teenager and determined to escape his father's abuse, a country with an uncertain future and military service, Elon moved to Canada at the age of 17. He did this by taking advantage of his mother's citizenship. His real goal was to reach the United States, the land of technological opportunities. His target was Silicon Valley, the ideal place for a young man passionate about computers. His father tells him that he'll soon return to South Africa as a loser, but Elon, with just $2,000 in savings, stays with a cousin in Saskatchewan and works on a farm. Shortly after, he moves to Kingston, Ontario to attend university. In 1990, his mother and siblings also arrive in Canada to start a life far from Errol, more modest, but happier. Elon finishes his studies at Queen's and moves to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States to study physics and economics. After graduating, he moves to California to start a PhD in applied physics and materials science at Stanford, but he drops out just 2 days later because he has a better plan: to start his first company. Now he's at the epicenter of technological innovation, and his goal is to do something to make money, but also something that brings change to the world. In 1995, at just 23 years old, Elon founded Zip2 together with his brother Kimball and his friend and partner Greg Curry, an entrepreneur and investor whom Elon met in Canada during his early years as an immigrant. The idea behind Zip2 is to offer an online business directory with interactive maps, assets, listings of local businesses, addresses, and routes. Something like a Google Maps so that readers of traditional newspapers like the New York Times can find establishments near their location. Zip2 is a resounding success, but even though Elon is the brains behind the project, the other investors believe he lacks experience in business management, so they decide to replace him as CEO and hire someone more qualified. But well, this isn't a failure either, because in 1999, the company Compaq bought Zip2 for $307 million, of which Elon took home the modest sum of $22 million. Not bad for being under 30 years old. Elon used part of that money to buy his first supercar, a McLaren F1. This was a dream he had had for a long time, since from a very young age he had developed a fixation with cars. At that time, Elon was also in a serious relationship with the writer Justin Wilson, his first great love, whom he met when they were both studying at Queen's University. Justin was key in Elon's early years. She was by his side during the most difficult moments of his early career, when he worked non-stop, slept on the floor of his office, and they lived with limited resources. After selling Zip2 and becoming a millionaire, Elon went straight to founding X.com. Nothing more and nothing less than a bank, but this wasn't a traditional bank, it was one that was completely online. For many of us, this business doesn't seem innovative at all, since that's basically how we do most of our transactions today. But remember, we're talking about 1999, when people still paid for everything with checks and didn't trust putting their money on the internet. Shortly after, X.com merged with its rival startup called Confinity, which had already developed a payment platform called PayPal. Yes, the very same one that's still around today and that you probably have installed on your phone. Musk was named CEO of the newly merged company. But soon tensions began to arise. His impulsive leadership style made investors and executives uncomfortable, as they didn't share his vision. The Confinity team preferred to keep PayPal as a simple payment system, while Elon wanted to turn it into a digital bank and switch the system to Microsoft Windows, which caused even more pushback. On top of that, many doubted his experience to lead a fast-growing fintech company. Meanwhile, Elon and his girlfriend decide to get married in January 2000. The event takes place on the island of St. Martin. And by September of that same year, they decide to celebrate their honeymoon in Australia. Everything pointed to it being a wonderful honeymoon until Elon received a call that ruined everything. Taking advantage of Musk's absence, the board of directors votes to replace him as CEO once again. And he is replaced by Peter Thiel, one of the co-founders of Confinity. However, they don't kick him out of the company. He stays on as part of the board of directors, and of course, he remains the largest shareholder. In 2001, XCOM officially changes its name to PayPal Inc. because it connects better with the public, and let's be honest, it sounds less like an adult content site. Additionally, PayPal is the star product and the most profitable one. So they decide to focus entirely on digital payments and leave behind the idea of creating a comprehensive online bank. This product becomes a success. So much so that by 2002, eBay buys PayPal for $1.5 billion. And Elon walks away with around 180 million. Around that time, Elon also has his first child. But sadly, just 10 weeks after being born, he passes away due to sudden infant death syndrome. After selling PayPal and becoming even wealthier, Elon decides to aim even higher. With resources, experience, and freedom, he revisits a childhood dream. In 2002, he founds SpaceX. Nothing less than a private space travel company. Its goal is to reduce the cost of space travel and make interplanetary life possible. Almost at the same time as SpaceX, Musk also bets on another huge goal: revolutionizing the automotive industry with a company called Tesla, which, by the way, was not founded by him. Tesla Motors was born in 2003 and was founded by engineers Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, a couple of enthusiasts passionate about the idea of creating electric cars that are fast, stylish, and functional, not slow or boring. The company, let's say, was in its infancy. It wasn't established, wasn't well known, and didn't have any products on the market yet. They basically only had the idea, a few car designs, and extensive research on lithium-ion batteries, so they needed a good investor who believed in the project. And this is where Elon Musk comes in. In 2004, he became fascinated with this visionary idea as he deeply believes that renewable energy is the future. For this reason, he invested $6.5 million in Tesla. As he usually does, he becomes the main investor and takes on the role of chairman of the board. Everything goes quite smoothly in this new business phase as he is enthusiastic and fully committed to the cause of renewable energy. So much so that in 2006 he also gets involved with Solar City, a company whose goal is to make residential and commercial solar panels more accessible, allowing people to adopt solar energy without paying a very high cost. However, in 2007, problems begin. That year, serious tensions arise between Musk and Eberhard, mainly over the direction of the project and especially due to delays in the production of the Tesla Roadster, the first high-performance electric car that the company wants to start producing. In the end, Eberhard is removed as CEO and Elon takes control as leader and product architect. By that time, a wave of business problems is looming for the entrepreneur. And what he is about to face goes far beyond any professional challenge. 2008 arrives, bringing with it one of the worst financial crises the United States has ever seen. With it, Elon faces his own storm since he has two companies to keep afloat, Tesla and SpaceX, both innovative and both on the verge of bankruptcy. As I mentioned before, Tesla is trying to launch its first car, the Roadster, but it faces delays, cost overruns, and a production process that is much more complicated than they had anticipated. The company urgently needs capital to survive, but the world is in the midst of a financial crisis, and the last thing investors want is to bet on companies at risk, especially one that aims to compete with giants like Ford or General Motors. All the money raised had already been spent, many employees were laid off, dropping from 300 to just over 100, and Elon invests millions from his own pocket to keep the company afloat, but it's not enough. Tesla is just weeks away from shutting down. At the same time, SpaceX is also going through a critical moment. Musk has put a large part of his fortune into funding his own rockets, but the first 3 Falcon 1 missions fail. The first attempt took place in March 2006, but the rocket failed to launch properly due to an engine malfunction. The second took place a year later, but a failure in the fuel pump prevented it from reaching orbit. And it turned out to be perhaps the most frustrating of all. It was so close to working, but the separation system didn't operate as it should have. If the 4th mission fails, Elon will have to say goodbye to his dream of reaching space. But despite the adversity, at no point does he consider giving up. In an interview, he's asked, "When you had that 3rd failure, did you think about giving up?" As if that weren't enough, the entrepreneur is going through a complicated divorce with Justine since, according to her, after the sale of PayPal, Elon has become increasingly dominant, cold, and self-centered. Justine felt practically like just another employee in Elon's life instead of his wife. This situation obviously also has a significant emotional and financial impact on Musk. Everything is falling apart. The situation is so critical that Elon has to choose which of his 2 companies to save with the money he has left. On September 28, 2008, SpaceX attempts its 4th launch. Everything is at stake, and years of work could go to waste if this opportunity fails. At this point, the only thing Elon could hope for was a miracle, and that miracle finally arrives. This 4th launch turns out to be a complete success, and the Falcon 1 becomes the first SpaceX rocket to have a successful launch, making it the first private company to achieve this. They had been saved. NASA was so impressed that in December of that same year, it signed a contract with SpaceX for $1.6 billion to send cargo to the International Space Station. SpaceX is no longer a joke, it's the future. At this point, SpaceX's vision, according to Elon Musk, is to make humanity an interplanetary species. Basically, this means that humanity can expand beyond Earth and colonize other planets as a way to ensure the survival of the species. A sort of plan B in case Earth faces a global catastrophe like an asteroid, a nuclear war, or a deadly pandemic. The idea of colonizing Mars, it may sound inspiring, but it also reveals a potentially problematic mindset. Because instead of taking responsibility and fixing what is already damaged here on Earth, it seems to suggest an exodus to a new planet when this one becomes uninhabitable. Some people have criticized this mentality of, if it's broken, why fix it? Because they believe it diverts attention and resources from the urgent task of taking care of what we already have. In fact, it seems that negative environmental consequences have already been recorded on Earth from SpaceX's own projects due to the massive amounts of carbon dioxide they generate, as well as the noise, waste, and damage to the atmosphere. But well, it's his money and he can do whatever he wants with it, right? Well, it's not that simple. The reality is that many of his companies, including SpaceX, operate largely thanks to subsidies, loans, and contracts paid for with public money. So, one problem could be that these are resources which, instead of being allocated to other priorities that could help heal the planet, end up fueling the dream of a private company to colonize another world. But what do you think about this situation? Do you think supporting these kinds of ideas is a waste of resources, or could it end up benefiting the entire population? I'll read your thoughts in the comments. Back to the story, SpaceX's crisis was over, but Tesla was still on the edge of the abyss. And then, that same month, right at Christmas, another miracle happened. Tesla also achieved the impossible. After weeks of calls, meetings, and rejections, Elon managed to close a $40 million funding round just days before the company would have run out of money. After this financial chaos, in 2009, Tesla received a key boost. The United States government granted it a $465 million loan through a program aimed at supporting clean technologies and reducing dependence on oil. Thanks to this loan, Tesla is able to develop the Model S, its first fully electric sedan which, unlike the Roadster, is more affordable, practical, and designed for the mass market. That same financial support also allows them to expand production capacity and make the definitive leap from startup to automotive manufacturer. After the Model S came the 3, X, and Y models, and by the way, if you put all the letters together in the order the models were released, you get the word sexy, which is part of Elon's sense of humor. Elon constantly recalls that December of 2008 as one of the toughest moments of his life. After that extremely stressful streak, everything starts to get better for Elon. The Tesla Model S becomes a resounding success, both in engineering and among critics, and SpaceX achieves one of its greatest breakthroughs by developing reusable rockets, drastically reducing the cost of space launches. With everything seemingly under control, Elon looks toward new horizons. In 2015, together with other Silicon Valley giants like Ilya Sutskever and Sam Altman, he founds OpenAI, a non-profit organization with the goal of ensuring that artificial intelligence benefits all of humanity, not just large corporations like Google or Facebook. During its early years, OpenAI publishes important research on artificial intelligence and creates OpenAI Gym, something like a training camp where an artificial intelligence can practice, make mistakes, and gradually improve. Elon creates The Boring Company, a business born out of the boredom of waiting in traffic with the idea of building high-speed underground tunnels for electric cars. From there, the concept of Loop is born, a fast and efficient underground transportation system. The project sought to be implemented in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and Baltimore, but it did not materialize due to technical difficulties and some doubts about its viability. Up until 2025, the only tangible success is the Las Vegas Convention Center Loop, which connects areas of the convention center and plans to expand to hotels, stadiums, and the airport. That same year, Musk also wanted to explore the most mysterious territory of all, the human brain, and founded Neuralink, a neurotechnology company with the goal of creating a brain chip that allows people to control computers with their minds, treat neurological diseases like Parkinson's, and in the future, merge humans with artificial intelligence so we don't become obsolete. While all of this was taking shape, Elon decided to leave OpenAI in 2018 for several reasons. The first was a conflict of interest, since Tesla was already developing its own artificial intelligence for autonomous driving. And the second reason was the chaotic shift of OpenAI from a non-profit organization to a commercial one now under Microsoft's control. It's worth mentioning that after his departure in 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence model that has changed the world today. One of the most epic moments in Musk's career comes in 2018 when on February 6th, SpaceX launches the Falcon Heavy, the most powerful rocket in the world. And as usual, something strange happens. The payload isn't satellites or humans, but a red Tesla Roadster with a mannequin in the driver's seat. All of this while David Bowie's Space Oddity is playing. The launch is a technical and media success. And most impressively, 2 of the 3 boosters return and land at the same time in a scene that many thought was computer-generated. With all his companies and technological advances, Elon Musk becomes a media figure. His name, face, and projects are on everyone's lips, which makes many admire him and others criticize him. For some, he is the real-life Tony Stark, an eccentric billionaire with futuristic ideas, self-driving cars, rockets that land, and even a company that aims to connect the brain to a computer. His popularity grows because he doesn't act like a typical businessman. Instead, he shares memes, throws out unfiltered ideas, and has a rebellious style, making him an idol for many people who connect with his irreverence and admire him for what he has achieved. He also appears in movies and series like Iron Man 2, The Big Bang Theory, and on Saturday Night Live. On Saturday Night Live, he reveals that he has Asperger's syndrome. In May of that year, his relationship with the singer Grimes caused a stir when they appeared together at the Met Gala. But with fame also came controversies. In 2018, the work culture at Tesla began to draw criticism. Reports surfaced of exhausting workdays, high pressure, and an unpredictable environment heavily influenced by Musk's controlling style. And after a reorganization, about 3,000 people were laid off, many of them by an email sent in the middle of the night without prior notice. Environmental concerns also arise because although Tesla presents itself as a green company, lithium mining and battery production have a significant environmental impact, something Musk tends to downplay. Another sensitive issue is the autopilot system, which Elon promotes as if it were fully autonomous driving. He has even suggested that you can sleep while the car drives you, but at least for now, that's not the case. It still requires supervision, and there have already been fatal accidents. And another wave of criticism arrives in November 2019 when Tesla announces its new product to the world, the Cybertruck, the world's first electric pickup truck. As usual, the news about Elon and his company makes headlines around the world for 3 main reasons. The first is its design, which is very peculiar and completely different from what pickup users were used to. Secondly, because for pickup users, an electric truck is inconceivable. This niche is full of large gasoline engines. So at first, they completely reject the idea. And thirdly, because the truck is launched with some rather peculiar features. Among them, the reinforced steel it is built with stands out. It's not completely bulletproof, but it can withstand small caliber bullets. The windows are also reinforced with laminated glass, but during a presentation where Elon asks someone to throw a steel ball, it manages to shatter the truck's windows, which puts the product in a somewhat bad light. Although it does get people talking about it much more, both positively and negatively. Anyone who knows a bit about Elon Musk's history is aware that over time, his public image has become increasingly controversial due to the ideas and stances he has taken. But if there's one thing that can't be denied up to this point in history, it's that Elon is someone who tries to innovate and transform the world. His career has been marked from the very beginning by projects that, at the time, many considered absurd or impossible and were therefore harshly criticized. The first major example was his bet on online banking. Back then, moving money over the internet seemed crazy, but today we all do it. Then came economically sustainable space travel, a goal that SpaceX is making a reality. After that, electric cars, something that is now a reality. And that's in large part thanks to Tesla deciding to take risks, offer a good product, and do great marketing. To this, we can add his efforts with autonomous cars, underground tunnels to combat traffic, Neuralink, and of course, OpenAI. Although Elon was no longer involved in the creation of ChatGPT, he was there at the beginning of the company, which today has changed the world. When someone tries to change the course of things, criticism and scrutiny are inevitable. To innovate is to challenge the status quo, and that can often make people uncomfortable. New things generate distrust, push us out of our comfort zone, and many prefer to stick with what's familiar rather than open up to what we don't understand. Elon's case is an example of this. Every one of his ideas has been under the microscope, and he himself has become a target for criticism because of his personality, his ways, or his statements. With this, I am by no means trying to say or suggest that criticism is useless. On the contrary, I believe it can be a valuable tool if it comes from people whose opinions you truly value or who understand the context. Those kinds of critiques can actually help you improve, rethink things, and grow. In those circumstances, listening doesn't mean that everything is wrong or that you're going to give up, but rather having the humility to ask yourself if the path you've chosen or are considering is truly the right one, and if what you're doing will really have the impact you desire. But it's also important to understand that criticism will never go away. It will be there at every step, especially if what you're doing is innovative. That's why if you have a firm purpose you believe in, if you're committed to contributing something positive, you need to be clear that part of the journey is learning to live with those voices. And finally, something I find worth highlighting from Elon's work philosophy, which he shares with many people who have achieved great things, is perseverance and resilience. Of course, these aren't qualities that will guarantee the success of a project, but I do think they're necessary to sustain your path toward your goals and objectives. Although Elon Musk tends to be private about his personal life, there is one intimate moment that captures the world's attention: the birth of his son XAA-12. In 2020, as a result of his relationship with Grimes. That name sparked a lot of reactions. It's a combination of symbols, letters, and numbers that I think reflects both parents' interests in science and technology. The truth is, no one really knows for sure if that's the child's real name or if Elon is just messing with us, but that's the information available at the time of recording this video. Later on in 2021 and 2022, Musk and Grimes had two more children with equally unusual names: Exadark and Technomechanical. Little is known about them since their parents have chosen to keep them out of the public eye, especially after their separation in 2022. Meanwhile, Elon keeps rising like foam. In January 2021, he surpassed Jeff Bezos' fortune and became the richest man in the world with an estimated net worth of $185 billion. Months later, he became the first to surpass $300 billion. In October 2022, he made headlines again by buying Twitter for $44 billion, with the idea of protecting what he calls the fundamental pillar of democracy, freedom of speech. He renames the network as X, fires half the staff, eliminates the board of directors, and launches a control system. He introduces a subscription-based verification system which creates chaos due to identity impersonations. In 2023, he begins to openly criticize the woke mentality, which sparks major controversy, especially because his daughter Vivian, a trans woman and daughter of Justin Wilson, cuts ties with him and rejects his last name. Reactions become polarized. Some see him as a defender of freedom, others as an irresponsible provocateur. In January 2024, Neuralink takes a key step by performing its first implant in a human being. Nolan Arbaugh, a quadriplegic after an accident, receives the device and manages to control a cursor with his mind and learn new languages. His testimony demonstrates the potential of this technology to improve the autonomy of people with severe disabilities. Neuralink continues its trials, still facing challenges, and for Elon, this is just one part of his mission to secure humanity's future. And that idea is also reflected in his personal life. Musk has 13 children. 5 with his ex-wife Justine Wilson, 3 with Grimes, 4 with Siobhan Seeley, a Neuralink executive, and 1 more with influencer Ashley Saint. Claire, about whom little is known. For many, this may seem excessive, but Musk has said that low birth rates are one of the greatest risks to civilization, and having more children is, for him, part of his mission to secure humanity's future. But anyway, I think the most important thing about bringing children into the world is taking responsibility for them. And let's hope that's the case with Elon. And while he tries to save the species, he also gets deeply involved in politics. In 2024, Elon becomes one of the biggest supporters of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Musk supports with millions of dollars and even works alongside him on the Government Efficiency Committee, known as DOSH, to reduce public spending and eliminate unnecessary bureaucracy within the White House, although many saw it more as a political show than a real measure that solved anything. But problems are quick to arise. Between April and May of 2025, Trump introduces some changes to the subsidies the government provides for electric cars, despite having promised to keep them. Obviously, this greatly harms Tesla's projections, since they had based their financial forecasts on the promise of these incentives. Although from Musk's point of view, his rejection of this law had nothing to do with that, but rather that, in his opinion, this law would put the United States further into debt. And in response, Trump accuses him of being ungrateful. He threatens to eliminate subsidies and federal contracts if Musk does not retract his statements. But Musk responds by accusing him and brings up Trump's alleged appearance in the Epstein files. In the end, this dispute resulted in Musk partially retracting his accusations and a 14% drop in Tesla's stock market value. Without a doubt, the story of this man is, in part, one of innovation, of wanting to change things, and of pushing the boundaries of what is possible. But looking at it from a more critical perspective, it is also a story that makes us reflect on the cost and meaning of innovation. To what extent does technological advancement serve the common good? And at what point can it become an extension of the desires and fears of the person driving it? That is something each person will have to consider and question for themselves. But since we like to focus on the positive here, I want to end by highlighting the best aspects of this man's work philosophy. And I think that is his ability to keep moving forward, despite setbacks and criticism, to try again and again, even when everything seems to be against him. The biggest dreams and goals are not achieved without determination and without that sometimes naive faith in what does not yet exist, but could be.